Hi, and welcome to Court Accountability Action with Midas Touch Legal AF. My name is MacKenZie Rumage, and I'm here with our senior advisor, Mike Sachs. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And today we're here with retired Lieutenant General Daniel Karbler, who served as the military consultant on the new Netflix movie, A House of Dynamite. And Dan, you were also the head of our ballistic missile response for what, nearly 5 years, the longest in tenure?
Yeah, 4 years for Space and Missile Defense Command. Yep, I was able to. I don't know if you call it setting a record, but I was in command for 4 years there. And anytime you have an opportunity to command, it's a great opportunity. And 4 years was awesome.
And that seems like a very long time to take on such a huge role, especially as you were also Chief of Staff for U.S. Strategic Command, or STRATCOM, as we might refer to it.
Yeah, so Stratcom was I did that 3 years, and then when I finished that job, that's when I got promoted, and then I took over the SN, the job at Space and Missile Defense Command. So if you think about it in its entirety, that's 7 years of working in the kind of the strategic deterrence field between Stratcom and the missile defense side.
So I think I'm just going to jump in with the first question that uh, spoilers ahead if you haven't seen the movie, but I think everybody's going to come out of this movie thinking, how likely is it that we're going to be hit with a nuclear missile? How likely, Dan?
Yeah, so the scenario, I've a lot of my friends in the missile defense and the nuclear business, and the space business, you know, they kind of want to, oh, that's not really that feasible. We would have attribution, you know, SIBRs would pick up the launch. And what they might not realize is before I got to Stratcom, and actually right before General John Hyten took over Stratcom, Ash Carter was the Secretary of Defense. He ran a training scenario very similar to what the movie scenario was like. And he did it no notice. So, I mean, not no notice, like we all sat there and saw missiles coming in. We didn't know they were fake missiles. But he basically said, exercise, 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 missile launch from the Pacific, take action. And his goal was he brought all, so this was a whole government, right? So the cabinet secretaries, were participating in it, not the president, but the cabinet secretaries, and then of course the military folks that respond. And and as you could maybe guess, the military side, who practices quite a bit, swung into action, processes, procedures, communications, the recommendations, did very well. The civilians were a little rusty. Um, and so the cabinet secretary, and that's why Ash Carter wanted to do this, because he wanted to get them involved. And so whether it was just challenges of getting, and you saw the movie, challenges of getting into that conference that was taking place, to challenges with interacting with a strike advisor, right? The guy with the nuclear decision handbook. They just had never practiced it, so they weren't familiar with just how to bring it all together. And so the this so Secretary Carter, his point was taken, and and when I was at Stratcom, then, benefit or not, I don't know, but that was when 2017, when KJU was doing his tests like every weekend. It seemed like every other weekend.
Kim Jong-un,
KJU
right?
is Kim Jong Un,
Oh,
right?
Kim Jong Un, yeah, Kim Jong
Yeah.
Un, North Korea, was testing his missiles, and so it was real world, and we got very, very practiced at it. And Secretary Mattis was Secretary of Defense at the time. He was on every conference, and he would get Rex Tillerson and other cabinet members, Pompeo. He would make them, not make them, he can't make them, but he would get them involved in these different conferences. And so, unfortunate a little bit that KGU was testing these missiles, but it worked out for us because it was real world scenarios that we were following, tracking, and training on.
And so you had a lot of preparation through at least two administrations that were looking to find their way towards ensuring that we as a country were secure against potential nuclear missile launches. Why are we talking about this right now in this moment? What was the inspiration behind the impetus, really, behind this movie and your signing on as a military consultant in this current particular climate? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on here? Why are we even talking about this?
Yeah. So Catherine, her, you
Catherine
hear her
Bigelow, the
talk,
director, for
Catherine,
people
yeah.
who don't
So
know.
Catherine Bigelow, the director, why did she want to do this? And she wanted to bring this, she wanted to engender this conversation. She talks about she's a child of the 60s when it was duck and cover. And that was kind of, and it was really it was a national discussion that would go on about, nuclear weapons. And then It just fell off. For whatever reason, it fell off, but it's always resonated with her. And given the volatility of the world right now, she wanted to bring it back to the forefront of America's consciousness in the discussion. And huge kudos to her for doing it, because my time at STRATCOM and then at Space and Missile Defense Command, the STRATCOM commanders, whether it's General Hyten, Admiral Haney before him, Admiral Richard, they always wanted to get the national discussion going, but they could never really break it out of the silos, just the specific, I call him the nuclear high priest, right? The nuclear high priest would talk about it, and the missile defense guys, they talk about it. It was just in their silos, and it never really broke into broader national level discussion. And now Catherine is able to get that discussion going on. And so I just think it's fantastic.
Well, let's get into that because you said on CBS Sunday Morning that Reagan, to the best of your knowledge, was the last president to go through one of these nuclear response
I was
exercises.
wrong.
And
By the way, I was
oh, you were
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah, so Rich Carell, he's up for confirmation to be the new STRATCOM commander. He testified last week. He said it was Jimmy Carter, which
Well,
is even worse, right? So it's
that's
even
even
further
worse,
away.
actually.
Well, I
That's
guess
where
because
the
under
pretty-
Reagan there was an actual scare, right? That where
I
who was
mean,
it?
Mr.
Came in and said,
Gorbachev,
I'm in charge
tear down
now
this
because
wall.
Reagan
Yeah.
was MIA.
Well, and the movie The Day After came, was shown. It came out when Reagan was the president. But so Carter was the last president.
Wow.
But that goes to your point of there's even a scene in the movie where Idris Elba, who plays the president, is talking with the Secretary of Defense of they only got one briefing at the beginning of their tenure about what to do. And the president says, I got more briefings about what to do when a Supreme Court justice comes back from the dead and wants his job back. Why has this been such a low priority for the White House since the end of the Cold War, or since Jimmy Carter, rather?
Yeah. So a couple thoughts on that. Cabinet members participate. They come to STRATCOM. We run them through scenarios, and then they'll participate as available in some of our broader exercises. A president's participation in one of these exercises. Well, let me back up. The STRATCOM commander briefs every president before Inauguration Day, so he gets briefed on the book, and however long the president wants to take on understanding the book and the contents and the process that goes on, that's up to any individual president and the STRATCOM commander. But a president, I can't blame presidents for not participating, and here's why. Even though the conferences are going to be held at the highest level of security classification, word will get out about that president's decision. And even if the president says, look, it's just an exercise. I just wanted to do this to see, how it played out, or I wanted to do this to see the process and procedures play out. Word will get out about what that president's response was, whether it was, I'm not going to do anything. We're going to wait because we could still respond if we needed, or I'm going to respond with our full nuclear arsenal. And so a president now loses all the political decision space because word will get out about that president's decision. And if they choose not to do anything, you're going to have one camp that's going to just come and just crush them. If they decide, hey, I'm going to launch all of our nukes in retaliation in this exercise, then they're going to have another side. And so a president, I think, has to retain some political decision space by not participating in an exercise, but they should be very familiar with the process and procedures.
Because it's ultimately the president's decision to press the button, the proverbial button. So if the president is not involved in those exercises, how does the president get that preparation for an in-the-moment type of decision?
Yeah, so sitting down with the STRATCOM commander one-on-one, that would be my recommendation. Sit down with Secretary of War and the STRATCOM commander and just to understand it again. The cabinet secretaries, whether Secretary of War, Secretary of State, they need to participate in this because they are also part of the continuity of government, which you saw in the movie. So each one of them has a potential role and responsibility. And we actually practice that in some of our exercises too, where president's not available, down to the vice president, exercise vice president, all the way down to the chain of command as we work that. And as you would expect, various levels then of experience, knowledge, familiarity, comfort with taking on that particular role. And that's what this movie, that's the beauty of this movie, is it's getting people to talk about it. From some of my folks at the that I know that are up in the Pentagon. I know that within the Pentagon, this movie has engendered a little bit more. Hey, we this is a movie that takes us seriously, and we need to make sure that we stay on top of our game.
The Pentagon, though, also sending around an internal memo trying to dispel some of the narratives in the movie. And specifically, they wanted to point out that in their view, there is a 100% accuracy rate in testing with our missile defense interceptors, but the big stat used in the movie is a 61% chance of success, the bullet hitting the bullet.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that memo? What are your thoughts on the Pentagon's response?
Yeah. So it was internal talking points to the Missile Defense Agency that got leaked out. So someone attributing that to the Pentagon, I think, is a little bit of a stretch because it did come out of the Missile Defense Agency as an internal memo. But okay, it's out, and the MDA point was, hey, it makes for a compelling movie, first off, but we're going to disagree with the 61%. Actually, they didn't disagree with 61%. They just said, hey, in our last 8 years, we've been at 100%. And I had to think about it. And at least in my time at Stratcom and SMBC, I can't think of any one of the operational tests that we did where we missed. But let's just the 61%. You got to look at the entirety of our test program from the very first missile that we tested up to 2023 or last missile 2024. I mean, I think that it's a apples to oranges comparison, because when the people say, well, what's in the silo right now, that's not the same missile that we tested back in the year 2000, right? I mean, we test that initial missile with seeker and propulsion and, all the different subcomponents of that missile. That's the first time it tested. It's probably going to fail a bunch of times. And then we get better and better and better. So then what we've seen now towards the last few years are successes. And then people can argue, well, they're scripted scenarios, or they're not as robust or as complex as the adversary might throw at us. Well, you have to baseline your tests. You have to baseline, what you're going, your missiles you're going to put up there. And frankly, we have tested against countermeasures. Our missile defense tests have gone against countermeasures in the last few tests too. So it's a little bit of an apple and orange comparison when they say, well, it's only 61% effective. Well, no, I would argue the missile that's in the silo right now is more effective than the missile that we tested 25 years ago that was missile number 1 or 2 or 3 that kind of started the test regime and became the part of the statistics of a 61%. We just did a puck session up in Washington, D.C. the other night. It was Noah Oppenheim, the scriptwriter, Catherine Bigelow, and myself. And the question got asked, and Noah said, it's kind of both sides are right. Yep, the 61%, it stands 12 out of 20, for the test of successes. But yes, in the last 4 or 5 years, Missile Defense Agency has been successful.
So it seems to I keep listening to this. We're talking about nuclear war, nuclear weapons, and it seems to me this should have been a discussion that ended, a generation ago, talking about the potential annihilation of our planet. So whether all this talk about non-proliferation, if not reducing stockpiles, where is that? Why is that not part of this discussion here? Is it just something that is practically impossible given the current state of the world?
Yeah, so that's Catherine's hope, is that it starts, getting towards a non-proliferation discussion. But, takes two to tango. And if you don't, China, Admiral Richard, when he was a Stratcom commander, talked about China's nuclear weapon modernization program is at a breathtaking pace. I mean, we weren't building any more nuclear weapons, and China was just, continuing to build silos and build very capable missiles, large yield missiles. So it would be professionally negligent of the U.S. military to not have a strategic deterrent to counter Russia or China as they continue to build their nuclear forces up. And the beauty of the movie is, though, it does give both sides an opportunity to have a discussion. Non-proliferation, they can talk about, hey, look at this existential threat. Why would we do this to our world? Those that are about modernizing the strategic deterrent or Golden Dome, or even, hey, our space architecture needs to be more robust and more solid so that we don't have non-attributable launches that would take place. That's the beauty of the movie. And then the missile, we don't know what happens at the end necessarily. Spoiler alert. Sorry. But we don't know. So it leaves a lot of open-ended questions to foster that discussion.
Yeah, and that was, well, when my dad saw it, he just went, "We don't find out what happens." And that is the big crux of the movie, and I'm sure it's going to start a lot of debate. Retaliate or not, especially because, alert again, we don't know where the missile came from. Can you walk us through some of the pros and cons of retaliating, which we see the military brass pushing for, and not, which some more diplomats or humanitarians may push for?
Yeah. When we go through our training and we go through a whole range of scenarios at Stratcom, from one-off to, existential, global annihilation. We're actually trained to tell the president, Mr. President, you do not have to make a decision right now, especially in the event if it's one missile and it's coming in and it's not threatening our nuclear arsenal. It's not, we're trained, Mr. President, you do not have to make a decision right now. You retain your full ability to respond militarily with subs, bombers, or ICBMs. You do not have to make a decision right now. All the way to, you can advise the president to launch everything because we have a huge salvo coming at us. So we have to launch back. Had the movie gone with, well, Mr. President, you don't have to respond right now, that's a very short,
A little less
pretty boring
exciting.
movie. It's not very compelling. But nonetheless, it is in our training DNA to make sure that the full range of options are made available to the president.
So we here at Legal AF and Court Accountability Action, we're courts and law people. We talk a lot about constitutional constraints, congressional constraints on the executive. And is this a law-free zone when it comes to facing an imminent nuclear strike from an aggressor outside of our borders? I understand that, launching our own strike, whether it's preemptive or not, that's not a law-free zone. But in the scenario that the movie depicts, where's the law in that? Is it just come down to one person's constitutionally entrusted discretion, and that's the President of the United States, or Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces?
So the right to self-defense, we always maintain that. And if we've struck, we get to strike back. There would certainly be the effort made to identify, to attribute where the missile came from before you strike back. And then there's a proportionality piece that would go into that too, that a president is going to take into their decision calculus of, okay, one came in here, tragic that we lost the city of Chicago and 10 million people. Potentially. We don't know if we lost Chicago or not, but the potential for that versus do you now improportionally now escalate this up so that, yeah, it was 10 million that we lost, but now my response has escalated this into something that has gone far beyond just losing one city. Those are all the things that in the discussion, in the collaboration with the president, especially in an example like I gave where, Mr. President, you don't have to make a decision right now, that would all be part of the discussion that would go on. And again, the movie, because the movie has its time constraints and you want it compelling and you want to make sure that, that the movie is, a good movie, you're obviously not going to get into all that because would not be very exciting it would not be very compelling for the audience.
I think that does it for us today. Lieutenant General Daniel Karbler, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations on the movie. It is truly, truly a feat.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.